Let's take a look at troubleshooting. Troubleshooting on the ShoreTel, and what does that mean? So first thing we'll take a look at is, please feel free to go to youtube.com/user/Lantelligence, or just do a search for Lantelligence on YouTube. And I've got a list here of some of the videos that we've done, and a lot of times these are initiated by customer requests, or I talk to our guys in our technical support team and say, hey, we had a lot of calls for this. Can I do a video so they can sort of do a self-help? So for instance, how to troubleshoot SMTP issues on your system. There actually is a way to go into the voicemail system and actually send a test voicemail message. It's called send ping to another location to see if it's actually being accepted or it's being blocked. Importing your ShoreTel into VMware. We've done some things on new products like ShoreTel Connect Director Tour, how to take a look at it. So feel free to take a look at that and sort of help yourself in self-guidance and sort of self-service. Now, some of the things that we usually point out that maybe some customers or clients don't know, but what we like to share is some of the phone commands that you can use on your system on the phone. Especially if you're troubleshooting somebody remotely in another location, you can't walk up to their phone and you want to get them to do some stuff and read some information back to you. Number one is mute info. So that's mute 4636 plus the pound key. Now, keep in mind that the phone commands must be done on phones that are on hook. So they cannot be talking to you on this phone. It has to be a phone that is on hook, so that you can actually do the mute and this 4636 pound. And what happens is it provides information on the configuration of the phone. There's probably about 15 or 17 menus that use the pound sign to move forward through. I will give you this warning, it doesn't go backwards. So if you miss a setting, like you're trying to find the gateway information on this phone, and you go past it, you literally have to loop right through it again, 17, 16 more pound signs to get back to the beginning. Mute setup. Okay, this is the ability to go in and actually set up the phone. So because ShoreTel uses DHCP for the phones to register, and it downloads option 156, that will download the configuration information from the DHCP server. If you wanted to statically set up the phone, you could do this by putting mute 73887 pound. Now, also if you boot up the phone and it says press any button to continue, you can do that as well, and it gets into the admin mode. And once you get into the admin mode, you know the password's 1234. So it provides the ability to sort of go into the phone settings. Now, again, I will give you some warning, is that ShoreTel defaults to DHCP, which means that if you have a DHCP on your network and you're trying to configure a phone statically, you have to set up the phone 100% statically. Or the static configuration has to be everything, because if you try to do sort of a mixed configuration, meaning, oh, I wanted to get DHCP on the network, but I'm going to hard code the gate. I'm going to hard code the MGCP server and the FTP server and all that sort of stuff. It will default to ShoreTel and take all the configuration and override any of the static stuff that you've put in there. So if you are going to statically configure phone, and usually what you do this for is to test your VLANs. You're having problems with your VLANs and you want to configure phone to be specifically on VLAN 2, and you want to dedicate a port on your network switch to be untagged for VLAN 2, so you want to see if your VLANs are working, you would go and statically set it up. But it has to be on a network either that doesn't have DHCP on it, or you statically set up all that configuration, the VLAN information, 802.1 tagging turned on, to test it out. Otherwise, the DHCP will overwrite it, and you will spend countless hours, or hopefully not hours, minutes, hours, wondering why you can't get this thing to set up statically, which means you're going to have to statically put the IP address, the subnet mask, all that sort of stuff. The other thing you do, a mute reset. So you can actually have somebody reset their phone. If they do a mute reset, 73738 pound, will reboot the phone. Now, if you're there, you can also tell them pull the power plug out of the back of the phone. If it's something they can't get to, they can reset the phone. So just a way of resetting the phone through the keypad. Clear. If you wanted to actually clear the configuration on your phone, so it's getting some information, or it's cached some information, and you want to get rid of that cached information, and you don't want to keep defaulting to the cache because you've changed the server, you could actually do a mute clear, which is 25327 pound, and clear the configuration, so it'll get everything new. But what it won't do is it won't reset your static settings, meaning if you set your DHCP to be static, you set your network settings to be static, not DHCP, it will not reset that to DHCP. So you'd have to go back in the phone and set that to DHCP is on. Then I think one of the great ones here, if you're troubleshooting anything, is the mute ping, which is mute 7464 pound. And this allows you to, on the phone, put an IP address in the phone and send it and see what the response is. Now, typically, and maybe on the 400 series phones, you can actually see some of the results. But on the old 200 series, 500 series phones, you basically see ping failed or ping succeeded. And why that's key is if you're having issues or one-way audio or can't reach another location, you can actually do a ping from that phone to your HQ server or to a DVS or to a voicemail to see if it reaches, and then you can go onto the server or the DVS and do a ping back in the other way to make sure that you've got connectivity between those two locations. So using mute ping is really helpful, especially if you're troubleshooting people remotely and wonder why they can't reach another location. An example is we had a customer who had basically said, our one office here, everybody can talk fine, they can call each other all day long, but as soon as I try to call head office, it's not working. It's just not, we're getting that voicemail is not available. It's not routing over there. And what we had to do is we actually went through and had them go mute info and literally go through the phone and read back the configuration to us. Tell us what the phone says, your IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, on and on and on. What we found out was none of the phones through DHCP had any default gateways. So of course it couldn't reach any other sites because it didn't know how to get there. So again, it was a networking issue, but the fact that the phones didn't get a DHCP gateway, didn't get an address through the DHCP. And that would be one of the reasons why you want to go through and troubleshoot and look at that on the phone. All right, we're going to take a look at troubleshooting and best practices. So we're looking at some stuff like backing up a ShoreTel HQ server and the requirements to back up a server. So one of the things we get is, what do we do when we want to back up the system? So we'll go through that so that you understand where the information resides and what we need as a support team to actually restore your system back to the way it was, because it can be done. So first thing is we need a copy of the MySQL database. ShoreTel actually has a MySQL database. Now they don't install MySQL Server. It's a flat database file, or MySQL that's not a server, that actually connects to write this information back and forth. And ShoreTel, we need a copy of that MySQL config database, and that will restore all the configuration information of your system. And we need the exact version of the build of ShoreTel. So one of the limiting factors that we have when we have an issue with restoring a system is that we don't have the version of software that they need to restore it. So, and because ShoreTel has multiple builds that happen, at least once a month in different build numbers, we have to go to ShoreTel. If it's not on the website or we don't have a copy of it somewhere, we have to request ShoreTel to put that on their tax site or their download site so we can download that. So that might take 2 to 3 hours to get that information up there, which means that whole time your system is down. So if we had an exact copy of your version of ShoreTel, the exact build, we would be halfway through or almost finished rebuilding it by then if you had a copy of it. Okay, so a copy of the MySQL database. ShoreTel copies, or it runs a system snapshot every night and retains the last 3 copies of the database. The files are stored on the HQ server as snapshot, month, day, year, and the time. And what you'll see is I've got here is under the PC, the C drive, Shoreline Data Database Snapshot. It's got 3. And you've got 3 copies. And if you do create a snapshot on the fly, an ad hoc snapshot, it will delete the oldest one and only keep 3 there. So it's always keeping 3 versions of that software. And this is a tar GZ file, which we can extract. And in there it has the SQL files for that database. But this is really configuration database. This isn't CDR, call detail records. So best practices. If you are going to make a change on the system and you're unsure of what you're doing, or you're going to make a significant change, like change your call routing from 3 to 4, your digits from 4 to 5 digits, that's sort of usually a one-way change. You can't sort of come back from that. So what we say is create a snapshot prior to making a significant change. And in there, in ShoreTel Connect, under the servers, and you got the server highlighted, you'll see down the bottom it says create a database snapshot. Now this will create a database snapshot, which is usually not a very large file because it's mostly text and it's SQL information, But if you have a large organization or a large deployment, it may take a few minutes for this dump to actually execute. So it might be something you want to run off hours if you have to. That way you're not impacting the system at all. So you can run a database snapshot right there. Okay. Store a copy off the backup HQ server. A copy of that SQL database that's on the ShoreTel is great, but what happens if you lose that drive, if you lose that server? So it needs to be off-site. Now, you can determine how many versions you want to have off-site, but at least a build of software doesn't change till you get upgraded. But if you wanted to keep a copy of a snapshot off-site, when we do the restore, it's only going to restore to the point where you took that snapshot. So if you had something that was a month old, we could restore it, and 90% of your stuff is going to be there, but the last 30 days of information and changes and new users and passwords will all get reset or put back to what they were 30 days before. All right, so exact version of the ShoreTel build. So always make sure you have a copy of that build of software. And typically when we do a deployment, we'll have two copies. We'll have the old version, the previous version, and the new version running on it. Because when we do an upgrade, we always keep the old version in case we have to do a rollback during the upgrade process, and we also have the new one on there. But keep it off the system. So if you have a SAN or NAS, you can put it on there, move it over there. So if you save it on the HQ server, move it over to a NAS for easy access. If it's a physical machine, you will need to spin up a new server and move the MySQL and ShoreTel build onto the new machine. So if we were to support you and try and rebuild this machine, and it's a physical machine, you would have to spin up, install the OS, and then take those backups you have off-site and move it over to the desktop of the new system, give us remote access, and we can start rebuilding it from there. And again, we can only rebuild the system to the point where it was restored or the last snapshot was taken. So voicemails that happen after this fact may still be there, but you won't be able to access them, especially if the links had really never existed, meaning that it rolled back to a previous snapshot and it's gone back to the previous versions. Now, keep in mind that if you had a voicemail there that you had deleted since then, you would have a link to a voicemail there, but there wouldn't actually be a voicemail in that directory unless you did a copy of the voicemails as well. Yeah, and any changes on the voicemail on the original server will most likely be lost. So next thing is we take a look at is troubleshooting best practices for call quality. Call quality issues are usually a network issue. Determine the scope and the site. The scope of the issue, right? Is it local? Is it site to site? Is it everywhere? That'll give your support partner like Line Intelligence a good place to start looking. Go to Connect Director and look at call quality to see if the reports are similar, if it reports similar issues. And I'll flip over to the Connect Director in a second to show you that. Also, you can run a WAN report to show your statistics, easy for me to say, statistics on your network or on your WAN. And that will be a great place to start looking at your issues. All right, I'm going to pop over to our ShoreTel Connect, and I'll expand this. And what I've done is I actually clicked under the first page, which is the maintenance page, and under call quality. And what you'll see here is all the call GUIDs. So this is actually all the call GUIDs, or the unique identifiers for all the calls that have happened, at least for these 20 calls. Now what you'll see here is right there, the little red arrow means we have a potential issue with a call. So I'm going to actually dial this, or I'm going to highlight it. And what you see down below is it will give you some information. So it'll tell you, who is the person A, which was the T1K that took the call. It's running a MOS of 4.5, which is more than fine. It's running G711, which is fine in the time. But you see here for the end user, you see that it has a MOS of 3.0, which means there's some potential issues, and also it has delay. So there's delay in that packet traffic of those packets with a max of 499 milliseconds or 451. What I'd like to point out is just because this is flagged as a potential bad call doesn't mean it's a bad call. Because it's a delay, Henry, who's the caller, may have never noticed the delay. Okay, because the way that they're conversing on the phone, they weren't talking over each other, or the delay wasn't noticeable. So the chances are, if he reports this, we have a correlation. But just by saying that it has a call quality issue doesn't necessarily translate into actual call quality issue. But On the flip side, if someone complains about a call quality issue, there's chances are this is going to be read on their call, and you'll be able to see down here all the information. And what you have here is you have multiple legs of these calls that you can see. If I highlight them, they update down here of all the issues that are going on, and these are all green, which mean are good. I can actually sort this by red, green. I probably put back start time, start date. So it goes back to that. So we had another call here. So again, I can see the call quality issues from here. The other thing I can do under my reports is go into reports and wait for that to pop up. And I go into my reports here and I go to call details. And under my report, I'm actually going to run what's called the the WAN media stream detail report. This is also a good place to go. So if you wanted to take a look at what's happening on your network, you can run this. And not only can you run this, if you can run this if you're single site, even if you got multiple locations. So what you do is you pick the date and time, and I can say, actually, I want these calls to be all calls. Default is intersite, so it wants to know the calls across the wide area network. But if I just want to run a report and say, show me all calls, it's going to show me calls that are happening, from person to person on my local area network and from person across the WAN to the wide area network. So I'm going to run this report. It becomes a crystal report. It's going to generate. And once we do, we'll see what's going on the wide area network and the local area network as well. So again, it's a great place to go in and start troubleshooting. See, am I having issues on my LAN or having issues on my WAN? 90% of the issues are going to be on your wide area network. Most of them are going to be in your local area network. So for instance, right now we're looking at 2 calls today between 12 a.m. and today is the 3rd, yep. And what we see is this is the call between Encinitas and Encinitas. And we take a look at the calls, jitter, packet loss, duration. So we got a WAN media stream report that is running today and shows that we've got 2 calls in total. All right, so you can run those reports. If I go back here and I just want to make it, let's say I'm going to make this, go back to Friday. Let's run this report again. I'll close that one. Let's see if we get some more detail. And now we have some more detail. So you see site A and site B are both the same location, Encinitas. And then you'll see the encoding, the G729, the G711, the jitter, the percent of packet loss. So for instance, we have one here that this call had 100%, almost 100% packet loss. Chances are that call is going to be a bad call. Not sure what, maybe a bad cable or something like that, or a bad port. But you see the duration here, and if I scroll through the pages, what I should see is there's the Encinitas to Toronto. So I have a summary saying 56 calls, average duration, and I can see what my packet loss is. And usually I should have next to nothing on packet loss on my local area network. Then I have Encinitas to Toronto. So we're running software-defined wide area networking between the 2 locations. So we're running VeloCloud. And you can see things like the jitter and the delay. So we're not running any MPLS, we're just running over direct inward access internet and the VeloCloud product. You can see the delay, any sort of packet loss, and we're all well within our less than half of 1% for packet loss. It's a 45-minute call right here, 20 max jitter of 20 milliseconds. And then we take a look at the last page, and this is Encinitas Toronto, the rest of it. So there was no Toronto to Toronto calls that day. Inter-office calls, so I can see the total calls. So that's the second place you want to go for troubleshooting your wide area network if you want to take a look at call quality issues. Domain, adding ShoreTel to the domain, best practices. Typically what we like to do is, if you're going to add it to the domain, we want to create a server OU. If you already have a server OU, you can reuse it or create a ShoreTel HQ or ShoreTel server organizational unit. And the reason why we want to do that is because we want to block inheritance. We want to give the administrators access to log in, with their admin credentials to log in everywhere. That's fine. But what we really want to do is we want to prevent group policies, because group policies can play havoc on the ShoreTel system. Things like, starting up firewalls, antivirus, blocking FTP, all that sort of stuff. So we want the inheritance to be blocked. So therefore, none of the group policies are applying to the ShoreTel server. And then you add the ShoreTel to that domain in the OU. Now, Windows updates. So typically Windows updates has been sort of, a real sort of gray area for most of ShoreTel. And what they normally recommend is that ShoreTel recommends only Windows updates that were released prior to the build release, they'll be supported. So if your software was released, the build that you have was released on July 3rd, 2017, any Windows updates up to that point in time are supported. If a new update comes July 5th, July 10th, you're technically not supposed to update it. And that might be contraindicated to most companies' server plan or update plan. There are ways that we have to live with it, but there are all ways that we can approach it in a unique way. So we'll show you some of those now. So what we want to do is we want to approach the updates in a couple ways. So number one, if the server is virtual, and keep in mind that it's usually it's usually the Windows security updates that are usually the most problematic, that cause things like it disconnects the MySQL, so you can no longer connect to the SQL database anymore, and it causes issues that sometimes the first thing you do is try and uninstall that update and reboot the server and see if it works, but a lot of times it could be basically finished at that point. We have to do a rebuild, which we talked about earlier. So if it is a server's virtual, your best option is to run a snapshot of those prior to those Windows updates. Then you can, let's go back here, and then you can run you run the snapshot, you run the updates, and then just monitor the system, see if everything is working fine. You log in a director, people can make and take calls, no issues, you're good to go. If there are any issues, you can revert to a previous snapshot, and then you're good. A lot of times what we'll do is, for those who have to do mass updates or have an update plan, what you can do is what we've done for customers is say, uninstall the ShoreTel software. We'll uninstall that. And all the configuration and database is all there, but we uninstall the software itself. We'll allow you to run all the Windows updates you need, and then we reinstall the updates. We reinstall the Windows, the ShoreTel after the Windows updates, because I don't know if we've ever seen a time where you cannot install ShoreTel over a system that's been updated versus you can really break ShoreTel by applying an update on a system running ShoreTel. So what we'll do is you can uninstall the software, run those updates for 5 hours on a Saturday, get everything up there, and then we reinstall the software. And the way ShoreTel works is it just reinstalls over the existing paths, and everything should come back up and be working the way it was previously. And the reason why we tell you this is if you're having an issue with ShoreTel, and they go take a look at your patches and your release dates, this is something that they can use as sort of a roadblock to say, hey, you have a newer patch that we don't support. You have to install it before we start troubleshooting. So again, at that point, we'll make the case saying, listen, that's not really affecting it, or they'll just say, listen, tell the customer to uninstall those updates, reboot the server, and if they're still having it, call back in. And for us to keep going forward with ShoreTel, we're going to have to ask you to do that. So if you want to do those updates, you can. Just keep in mind, if we are running an issue, that they will have to be removed or uninstalled so we can continue on with the ShoreTel support. Now, normally we don't require ShoreTel for that much, but when it comes to bug issues and fixes and software engineering issues, we have to defer to them because they're the guys that wrote the software. So that's basically it. This was a webinar that we gave on June 7th, and which I forgot to record, and so part of my commits was to record it after the fact and make it available to those who attended our training. So if you do have any questions, as I mentioned before, you can go back to let's see if I go back to the first slide here. Let's go back to here. You can basically send an email to us or to myself, ken@landintelligence.com, and just send a message or go to our website and to the Contact Us page and submit a contact for us to contact you. And if you have any questions, if not, thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you next time around. Thank you.